Hey, everybody, welcome back to I don't know, Shayna, what should we call this? This isn't an emergency pod, but what is this? What is this?
Little preview pod.
Alliteration. We love it. We love it. Yes, friends, we are here with you. This is myself, Alison Lucan, as I said, and the illustrious, amazing, brilliant, and beautiful Shayna Goldman. But we are here, just the two of us, quickly because our third partner in crime, Sara is, y'all, boots on the ground at the Stanley Cup Final, first two games in Edmonton. We couldn't have a better voice there for all of you, aside from the people who were in our mention saying that since she doesn't allow replies from people she doesn't follow, but sir, suck it. So here we are. Anyway, follow Sara. That's why she's not with us. So we're going to save our usual segments for a full-on episode because when we aren't fully too many men, we respect that we are not fully too many men. So it's just two of us, but we're going to bring you up to speed with where things are in the world of hockey, particularly because the Stanley Cup Final begins tonight. But before we get to the Stanley Cup Final, and folks, we've heard comments from both sides of the aisle. Let it be said that we will always be talking about women's hockey because what's happening in women's hockey is just as important as what's happening in men's hockey. And that is that we are nearing key dates for expansion and regular drafting for the PWHL. That's always important. But as I mentioned, there's an expansion draft as well because there are two new teams on the PW landscape, of course, Vancouver and Seattle. And as we record this today, we got the team's protected lists yesterday, and there's been a lot of reaction. Teams right now are allowed to protect three players. They will ultimately be able to add a fourth player to the list as teams now go into a free agent signing period. If you haven't already seen it, I retweeted it yesterday. For me, one of the cleanest looks at this was a great tweet from Kyle Cushman. That's at Kyle_Cush, who did the breakdown of who's protected and who's not by salary band and position. So you get a really nice look at who's available in the league. But Shayna, other than just the overall excitement, and I think I want to talk about this, many people reacting to the Hillary Knight unprotectedness of it all. But to me, and if Hillary Knight ends up in Seattle, I will literally throw my own little parade. But I think she might be a little bit of the Trojan horse because there's also some other key players unprotected that I see. What are your initial takes on the picks, the protections, and what comes next?
Yeah, it's wild because you're seeing names out there like Sophie Jakes, Claire
That's
Thompson.
the one.
I
Yes.
mean, Minnesota wins back-to-back championships. And what makes them successful? You go, well, they have elite talent, obviously, but they have a really strong blue line.
Yes.
And two of those blue liners are available. But so you have to think that Minnesota ideally wants it that when they lose two players, they can use that fourth protection spot to protect Sophie Jakes, but I don't think she will still be available by then. So it's so wild. And then in New York, you have Alex Carpenter, which raised a lot of red flags because she is an offensive like master for a terrible team. She does everything. She drives play. She's versatile. She can play center. She could play wing. She could do it all. And then obviously with Hillary Knight, you have a lot of big name players. Emrys Mashmeyer, that's another one that you're like, wow, okay, Ottawa is going to leave her exposed because Gwyneth Phillips is showing she can be the goalie of the future. There are so many good players to go with, but it's really tough because you have to keep in mind the salary of it all and all those contracts. Like we did a mock draft yesterday for the Athletic, and I picked Hillary Knight as Seattle because I'm thinking her family lives out west. It
God
could make a
bless.
lot of sense. I think why not usher in a new wave of women's hockey in Seattle? I feel like that's something she's done throughout her career. It makes a lot of sense. And you could look at her and go, okay, we're going to sign you in that signing window and make this work. But then do you go for Alex Carpenter? And I went, no. My hot take was I wouldn't go for Alex Carpenter. I would be targeting Hannah Bilka. I would be targeting Sir Dackney and be going for the younger talent instead
100%.
of bogging yourself down with these two huge contracts at the same time. So you could kind of look at it and go, maybe New York is playing 4D chess going, someone's not going to do this because of the contract restraints. So protect Zandy Hart, who I know some people disagree with, because you don't want to lose all of your good defenders. and hope for the best with that. Or maybe you say it's Sara Filier's team and we're going to turn around and give Fillier the money that Carpenter was making. Like it's really tough. So it's going to be so interesting to see how teams navigate this because it is a little bit more convoluted, the entire system, but I do like it. Like as we went and did it and tried to like figure out how teams would proceed, I'm like, okay, the more you do it, the more it makes sense.
Yeah, it was funny. I was talking to someone brilliant in this field on both the men's and women's side, who's way too brilliant to be listening to our show right now because they are busy. But they pointed out to me that this will be, I think it's just the fourth time in Major League sports that an expansion involves two teams at the same time. So to your point, I think watching, and I was part of, well, I wasn't officially part of, but Columbus and Minnesota were the last pairing to go through. And it's really fascinating. We're so lucky to watch this, right? Because we're going to see two teams kind of jousting for what they say their identity is. To your point, how are they going to manage their cap? And I'm with you. Like I would, like I said, love Hillary Knight to come out west. I think it makes sense. I think from a marketing perspective, it is a freaking slam dunk to bring a name like that out to the new markets when it's farther away from where the other established teams are. But don't sleep on signing the youth now, which is why I would love Sophie Jakes also in Seattle. Am I tampering? Maybe. Who's to say? No one's listening who makes decisions. But if I was in charge, and I'm
Maybe they are.
definitely
Maybe they
not,
are.
I'm definitely not. But I mean, Sophie Jakes is, she won College Player of the Year her senior year. She is an active defender. She's a rover. She's incredible. So I think this is going to be really, really fun to watch. All of June is peppered with, again, as you said, the signing period, and then we'll have expansion draft and full on regular draft for new talent. So it's going to be a fun time. Anything else I forgot so far?
No, I want to add to your point, like of going for the youth. Like it's something we saw in the first expansion draft, the first draft, right? The inaugural PWHL draft, where it's like, do you go for the Heiseys and the Alina Muellers of the world, or do you go for the Jocelyn Larocques? And there were some tough decisions to make there because if you go for Carpenter and Knight, you might be a contender this year, right? The idea is to make these teams competitive off the bat. But are you going to be in the long run? Like, do you go for the young guns first? Like, it's going to be so cool to see. But different from the NHL, how they did it the last time. Like when Vegas, we had that first expansion in some time, everyone learned from it ahead of the Seattle, right? Like everybody was learning, okay, don't play these games because you might get burned by it. Don't swing these deals. Be a little bit more careful. And also, the expanding team learns from it, right? Like Seattle could take notes what worked, what didn't work for Vegas. You don't have that opportunity. This is now the first time you're seeing expansion in the PW, and it's happening at the same time. So we'll see what teams 9 and 10 learn from this when they eventually come around. But, Seattle and Vancouver don't have that benefit of seeing somebody else do it either. So that makes it even more challenging.
That's a really good point. And I also think I'm going to say something perhaps controversial. Don't come for me, fans. But the whole point of why we've been fighting for continued exposure and a professional league and the growth of women's hockey is that the whole point is the more girls and young women you have playing, the deeper and better the talent pool gets. And I would suggest that in some cases, some of these younger players may actually be better than the veteran names that we know because the talent, which is exactly what we wanted, just keeps elevating, elevating. And I say that with full respect to everyone who's played and everyone's in this league. I'm certainly not discounting the veteran talent, but it's worth saying it's not just about going young for cost potentially or for longevity, but in some cases you could be getting the better player.
Yeah, like Danielle Sugakny, second overall pick last year. Like I know you might look and be like, well, her rookie season was just okay. Okay. If I'm an expanding team, I'm like, I'm gonna give that girl the ice time she deserves, that she's earned, and she's gonna be my superstar. Absolutely, there are young players out there that are like the next wave. We're already seeing them take over on like the senior national teams too, right? Like if Sara Fillier was available today, we'd be saying that's the best player available in the draft, period, the end.
Listen, who scored the cup winning goal this year for Minnesota? Just saying, just throwing it out there. Anyway, okay. Let's move on. Again, like I said, this is just a quick episode to see and take pulse of what's going on. We'll come back with our regular bits where we're going to do a swing around. We know there's lots of news and notes around the league, but we can't do that without our Sara. So Shayna, what we wanted to do very quickly is first and foremost, let's talk about the Too Many Men Cup. We obviously have had the conference finals resolve, and I'll give you the full round results. None of us did great, just to be clear. So, so both you and I got a point in the East because we both picked Florida. Sara was loyal and picked Carolina. None of us got the number of games right. And, in hindsight, we probably should have known. I mean, Carolina, good job. You won one, maybe next year too. It's all a process. And then in the West, only Sara got a point because both you and I picked Dallas and Sara rightly picked Edmonton. So as we sit going into the Stanley Cup final, everyone got 1 point. So it is me in the lead with 6 points, Sara and Shayna tied with 4. But we don't want to debrief a whole ton about these series without Sara's excellent analysis. Also, what we thought was relevant because so much stuff lingers, right? And so let's talk about some of these narratives that seem to be sticking around that need to be dug into more or need to be debunked thoroughly. And let's start in the East because that is the one that finished first with Florida winning in 5 games over Carolina.
Okay. Let's talk about the Cane system because this one's like irritating me. I think the Canes and the Stars are being talked about in two very different ways, and it's kind of odd to me when you look at the fact that Dallas has lost in the conference final, what, 3 times in the
Three
last
times.
five
Yep.
years? Like they also are clearly doing something wrong. And I think that like there is something to learn from the Canes. I don't think there's an issue with the way they play hockey. They play tight defense. They suffocate their opponents and take away time and space. They are a very disruptive team that works on the penalty kill. And I think after the first game of that series, they figured it out too, after, getting a little bit shaky in an area of strength. And they put a lot of shots on goal. Like all of that's well and good. They have an aggressive forecheck. That works in the postseason. The issue with it is, I think, is that you need more skill within that system. I wouldn't be looking at going, you have to redo the system and change your identity. I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is that their lineup is not deep enough. You shouldn't have Dmitry Orlov on your second pair and think that's going to be okay. And then when Chatfield's hurt, you're shit out of luck, basically, right? Like I think that they don't have a true 2C. They need more top six talent. So if they add that, I think that's what puts them on pace with the Panthers, right? Because they play similar styles on both ends of the ice, but the talent disparity is huge there. But I feel like everyone's acting like, all right, well, the Canes have to strip it down and redo it. Well, they have a ton of cap space this year. They have a ton of assets at their disposal. They're going to have another year of Logan Stankoven. And it kind of looks like they knew this might not be the year to put all your chips in the middle, even though they had an easier path to the conference final. But it like next year's the year. If they load up on talent, the system should be fine. And then you put the two together and you have a complete team. Like, am I insane for thinking that?
Listen, Rod Brindamore in his post-season comments basically said he went into this being like, I don't know, guys. Like not that he didn't believe in his players, but he is a smart hockey player who's won a cup and he had concerns about their ability to go deep. I do wonder the point of the man-to-man play. They're good at it, but it can be exhausting, particularly against a team like Florida, right? So do you want to look at that maybe? But I'm with you. I think that the reason Carolina lost is overall lack of talent depth, 1,000,000%. And now, while you've offered the astute analysis of the actual stuff that was happening on the ice, I know it's been a minute, but people are still talking about it. So are we. This handshake thing is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. So if you weren't following along, basically somewhere in the middle of the series versus Toronto, Paul Maurice decided that coaches should not go through the handshake line at the end of the series, even though it's something he has historically done in his coaching career. After beating Carolina, there was footage caught of him talking to Rod Brindamore, who looked, I'll say it nicely, confused, if not irritated, to have a conversation about not going through the handshake line. And Paul Maurice continues, and it's because he's being asked in fairness, but continues to go on and on about how this should be for the players and this and that. Here's the thing. As people probably know, when a team goes into the playoffs, you're calling up black aces. So you're calling up 6, 7, 8 players from your AHL squad who are likely not going to play, but they're there for the experience. You have additional training staff. You have additional coaches. You have ownership. You have, Luongo was on the ice for Florida after they beat Carolina. Are there a ton of ancillary people who probably don't need to muddy up that handshake line and it should be kept to a smaller group? I concur. But I think coaches should definitely go through unless they choose not to. And particularly a coach like Rod Brindamore. I cannot imagine going up and trying to convince the man to not go through. Do we say, let's bring up people who've been with the team all season? Sure. And maybe this is a conversation you have before you're standing on the ice about to
That's
go
the
through the
thing.
handshake line. But this is wild to me. I think to define only the players as being the ones who've been in the competition is a little short-sighted. Your thoughts?
No, I'm with you. And I don't even have a problem with Maurice going, this is my opinion. Then it should have been discussed at the beginning of the series. Shoot it out a text, do something, have a fucking pigeon send a letter. I don't care. But I think it made Brindamore look bad. And with his answer, there were points I agreed with. It's a beautiful moment and we don't need to see the coaches. And I'm like, okay, I'll hear you. Like, that's your opinion and that's fine.
100%.
But the 2 minutes of preaching about it, I was kind of like, this is a little much. And then when he's saying things like, well, Rod was a former player, and well, Berube was a former player and agrees, but also Rod's a former player. That doesn't mean Rod has to agree with it just because
Right.
he's the former player. He's the Stanley Cup champion. I'm sorry. Like, as a player, as a captain, like, it's totally different. That I just didn't understand that comment in there. But it's like you outcoach the man on the ice. You don't need to now outcoach him in a press conference. And I feel like it just went a little bit too far. And that's why the conversation, I think, has escalated the way it has, because we all like the comments Paul Maurice makes in that he speaks, right? And it's not just coach speak,
100%.
but like that whole soliloquy didn't need to happen. It was just too much for me. And if you want to have that view, that's fine, but you can't expect everyone to just agree with you. Like Rod Brindamore, I think, said as much. Like, these are players he's coached before too and has worked with before. You want to go through that line and be like, you did a hell of a job. Great, great work and good fucking luck. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's the part of the game we all love the most. So if coaches are in it and they choose to be, great, wonderful. I have no problem with it. Could it be a shorter line? Sure. I mean, fuck, sometimes we don't even get to see it on camera, so who knows if we're seeing that beautiful thing. But I just think it went too far and it was self-inflicted by Maurice.
Yeah, and I agree with and like you said, Rod said as much. And like I know when I have the opportunity to travel or have a team come to Seattle, and like if there's a player that I had a special connection with in terms of covering them and covering their journey, I want to be able to say hi and just be like, it's great to see you thriving. And so like Rod's point of like, I've coached some of these players. I feel like he should be able to have that moment if he wants it. Um,
Absolutely.
but yeah, so Carolina goes back. We'll see what they do. Eric Tulsky coming out in his postseason comments saying they're looking to re-sign everyone and they're going to have some cap space. So we'll see what they do. We'll talk about Florida and their next set of play here in a second. But let's now recap the West. And again, Dallas falls to your point. Third time here, second straight time to Edmonton. It's funny. A lot of people were talking about how lethargic and bad, quote unquote, Carolina looked against Florida, but I was stunned at what we saw from Dallas. I expected much more of a fight. I expected much more tangible competition between these two teams. Lots of narratives coming out of this one, but Shayna, I know you have something in particular you want to dial in on right away.
I have issues with Peter DeBoer as a coach. I'm gonna
First of all,
say
the
it.
brown suit. Can we talk about the brown suit?
The fashion choices are not there.
That was bad.
They're not there at all. So that's one thing. But like the other part of it is I have issues. Okay, I've never been like some Peter DeBoer stan. Like I'm gonna say it, right? Like I thought there were flaws in some of his coaching, but I think he's fine. Like of your retreads, I understand why teams go with him to an extent, right? It's different than other guys that you see with like shorter success rates. They don't go to the playoffs. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, maybe he was the coach to get the Stars to this point, but now someone needs to take him to the next level. And you look at how this series went wrong and how he handled Jake Ottinger, and I have a lot of problems with that. Was Jake Ottinger perfect in this series? No. Do I think he had a bad game four, though? No, I think he gave his team the best shot possible to stay in the game. So I feel like DeBoer went into this with this idea that he might pull Ottinger
Hmm.
if he needed to, because he had it on hand, well, his record against Edmonton. Well, Bestie, maybe you should have experimented with that a little bit sooner. But I feel like in that moment, you're up against elimination unless Ottinger looked completely out of sorts and shaky. And I didn't even think he did against those two goals. You leave him in net, right? Like that's your ride or die. He got you here and now you're gonna let him go to the finish. And I think that there's something about learning from the earlier series. I think about Connor Hellebuyck in game 7 against the Blues. He allowed two early goals and he did look shaky. And the Jets still went, he got us here and we are keeping him here. And he got it together in a way I think Ottinger would have, right? Like I would have been shocked if he fell apart. And if he did, then you stop the bleeding, and I understand that. But I don't think it was at that point yet. Then he throws him under the bus when I'm like, that's your franchise goalie. He's one of the best goalies in the league. I don't care if he wasn't perfect in that game. That's not how to handle it. I have bigger issues with the lineup in front of him. Playing Cody
Mhm.
Ceci in these tough minutes where he's getting eaten alive, maybe you go 11-7 in this situation when you know you could do it, right? Or swap out Ceci for Lyubushkin or something. Like, yes, you're going to be held back by your roster, but then what about the forwards, right? The forwards, the offense dries up. They switch back to a first line of Rantanen, Hintz, and Robertson that wasn't doing anything, and they're like, oh, okay. Like, why not throw Granlund back there? You're making Jamie Benn play matchup minutes. He's getting eaten alive defensively in his minutes. They're doing nothing offensively in his minutes, and he's still playing in a role that maybe he shouldn't anymore, right? Like you're the coach, and maybe you see someone else can't step up as a leader with him still there. He's the captain. You should do something about that too. Like there's so many different elements that I'm like, coaching should have been more hands on there instead of throwing the number one goaltender under the bus. That I would say it might be time to look at a different coach. And it's not just because of the Ottinger comments. It's just this team, it feels like keeps hitting a wall and management's putting out a pretty good roster. Someone needs to do something more with it.
Yeah, I think, and I have not dove as deeply into DeBoer's coaching. I mean, on the flip side, you have to remember this is Mr. Game 7, right? And that was always the
Right.
joke, because like they couldn't let the series go to 7, because then of course Dallas would win. And so he's done some good things. I struggle, right? Because I did not love his post-game comments at all. I thought it was short-sighted, but we always ask people to say what they're thinking. So here we are. What I struggle with, and I go back to, and we've talked about this a ton, I've written about this on a league-wide level, like players want to be treated with honesty and respect. It doesn't mean they have to like it, but I didn't love that the pull came like right at the end of the timeout. It that, to your point, like that seemed to jar everything more. And for me, I mean, look what's happening in Edmonton. They go back and forth between two goalies. Could they have gone back to Otter later in the game? Maybe. I don't
Yeah.
know. But I didn't like that it was a late pull relative to when play stopped. And I agree with you. While it might have been injuries, while it might have been a ton of different things, to me, the bigger issue for Dallas was their lack of offensive production and their lack of being able to establish the tone by scoring first or at least holding even. Um, and I would have rather focused on those issues than because now the lightning rod is Jake Ottinger. And you just have to hope that everyone can smooth it out, and we'll see. And maybe not wear brown suits. That's my,
Maybe not. Maybe
maybe,
not. Maybe score more than five-on-five goals in the Western Conference Final to a team you lost to the year before because your offense dried up. You know they're the best offensive threat in the league. Couldn't take advantage of some of their gaps in defense and goaltending. Nope, that doesn't work. And I think what was it? The stat was that they were trailing 14 games of the postseason.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, weird.
Well, and what's interesting is, and I will say this in defense of the Stars, I think it's real. The little that I understand about how coaching staffs prepare for playoff series, because so much is going on, that, what was it, 7-game losing streak at the end of the regular season. I
Yeah,
think they didn't have time to process that, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
and Columbus had a year like that. It was the year they had the crazy 16-game win streak, but then they ended the season on a losing streak. And as a result, the coaching staff made a lot of like knee-jerk reactions going into the playoffs, and they were out in the first round. So it's just whatever. Good coaches find their way through, and maybe Pete DeBoer learns from this, but like Dallas they have the talent. They have to figure out now how to take the next step for sure.
Yeah. And also too, like speaking of that losing streak, they were bad since Four Nations. They were bad since Heiskanen went out. And we knew they were gonna struggle, right? Like all of the underlying numbers, they were one of the worst 5-on-5 teams from Four Nations to the end of the year. There were signs that losing streak was going to happen, but they were winning games. And I don't think they made the right changes then. And it
Mm,
kind of, we all remembered that when it was like, oh shit, they might lose this series to Colorado. Oh, look at the injury. Oh, look at that. And I think it kind of reminded us. And then they win the series, and it's like, well, that's gone. And then they beat the Jets, and you're like, oh, okay, well, that's out of sight, out of mind, because now we're all talking about Ottinger and Hellebuck, and it's like, wait, but that foundation's still there. Yes, the 82 game season doesn't matter much in the postseason. Get there, and it's all different. But it's like that's still there. So, like you said, like they had to figure out all these other things, but it's like they had a lot of time to do that too. That you're like that those trends were there.
yeah. And
They can make
unfortunately,
so much worse.
as we all know, in the playoffs, everything that's trending and all that can fly out the window because this is such a small amount of time and such a small sample size. Any one thing goes wrong and the whole thing flies off the handle. So farewell to you, Dallas Stars. Farewell to you, Carolina Hurricanes. We offer you both generous handshakes of appreciation. But here we are. Tonight we have game one of the final, which, and every time I say this, it still blows my mind because Florida has been so dominant. Edmonton is the home team as Florida looks to defend their title. It's their third straight Stanley Cup Final, the second straight year we have these two teams matching up. Both teams are saying of both teams that they are both better in terms of what they lacked last year. We'll get to our picks in a second. But Shayna, what are the keys to success for you? I know you and Dom had a prediction, and if I recall, it's slightly in Florida's favor. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think the model,
I think it
can
was
we all go by the model?
55, 45, I
Yeah,
think.
I think so. And I think it was a 4% swing because of the Zach Hyman injury, if I
Yes.
remember right. That's a Dom problem. Me and Sean do the rest. That's a Dom problem. Anyone has a problem with the numbers, talk to Dom. The answer for everything. But no, I I think that there's a couple things stand out for me. One, I think it's the experience of last year is going to help the Oilers in the same way the experience from losing the final to Vegas helped the Panthers, right? Because I think Connor McDavid said it in an interview to Emily Kaplan, who she doesn't make it about herself. She is a fucking superstar. Okay, let's just call a spade a spade. If you're going to compliment her, just say she is a superstar. She asks thought-provoking questions and connects with the players in such an interesting way. We love her. Keep thriving, but like doesn't make it about herself, please. That one. Anyway, she asked McDavid when he won the series what's different about them. And he was very talkative and gave really good answers. But he said, like, they were nervous the year one doing it, right? Because you probably are like, holy shit, we overcame the 82 game season. We got through 3 rounds. Now we're here. This is the moment we've been waiting for. And obviously, that can make you a little bit more nervous and anxious. And then you go down 3-0. At that point, you're down 3-0. You have nothing to lose. Just go, right? And I think that's when you saw them play
Dig the
their
fuck
best.
in, Shayna.
I mean, it's iconic. It is absolutely iconic. And I'm very excited to see what kind of speeches we get this year from him. But yeah, like he said, like this year they're much more relaxed. They have that seasoning. They have that experience because it's not just having playoff experience, it's getting the experience of being in the Stanley Cup final and being in that environment. And also now I'm sure they have some confidence. They know like we were down 3-0 and we forced 7 games. So they go through the regular season. It wasn't perfect, but I think that they knew it, right? Like Chris Knobloch's coaching in the postseason has been unbelievable, I think. I think the players, the depth players are stepping up in a way. The defense looks good. Stuart Skinner, if you overcame that, now you have him playing at a really high level and you have Pickard healthy again. So it's like all these things that we would like knock them for in the regular season, they weren't worried about because they were like, just get us to the playoffs and let us cook. We are ready to, finish what we started last season. So I think that is a key to the series on their end.
I am going to say that I actually think for all that's better and all the wrinkles, for me, this is going to come down to goaltending and duration of the series because I think that Florida has the advantage the longer the series goes. Because if you listen to, I agree with you, there's this definite confidence on Edmonton's side, which Florida absolutely has to be prepared for. But the Matthew Tkachuk and Brad Marchand of it all is kind of like, fuck you. Like,
Yep.
and so and Florida has had our whole point is to grind away at you so that when it comes down to it, you can't do what you want to do. So I think if you're Edmonton and if you mentioned that, like, they're not going to want to go down 0-3 for a million reasons, but they've got to try and get going as quickly as possible because the minute Florida gets their claws into the series, I think that's advantage Florida.
Oh yeah, I'm 100% with you. It's like there's a little blood in the water and they know how to strike, right? Like they went down 0-2 against Toronto. It didn't matter. And it's not just because it was the Leafs. It was the Panthers, right? Like if they
Yeah.
did that to any other team, I still would have picked a comeback from Florida at that point. I think the fact that they got through round one with such ease, it was
Yes.
like, okay, here's this team at full strength that we haven't seen until the playoffs. Like here they are, and that's exactly right. Like if they get their claws into the series, it's game over for Edmonton. I don't care how much better they look and how prepared they are. The Panthers know exactly what they're doing and how to amp it up and just take the life out of a team. It's not just, oh, they're going to beat them up a little. Like, here it is. The Canes are up 2-0 in an elimination game, and they are playing great. And all of a sudden, the Panthers are like, all right, we're going to wake up now and we're going to end this like that. Okay.
What do you make about the, and we're in this weird time of year, particularly for fans, it's different, but for those of us who work in hockey, we love it. But during the season, all we want is like one night we don't have to worry about
Yeah.
hockey. But now we're like, oh no, there's no hockey. Even for this being that time of year, this felt like a really long break. And there's always two competing schools of thought here, right? And we know both sides have injuries. The rest. Some people are saying if you're Stuart Skinner, the last thing you want is to stop playing for a period. But then if you're Matthew Tkachuk, you probably want rest to try and maintain whatever it is you've been battling with all season. What do you think about the amount of rest going into this? And do you think it's an advantage to either side at all?
I think having that rest is what hurt the Canes. I felt like they hit a wall and the Panthers were just running on adrenaline heading into that series, right? Like it never stopped. I'm sure it's going to help Matthew Tkachuk. And I'm sure on the Oilers side, it's going to help Leon Draisaitl, who was hurt at the end of the year and I don't think looked like he was up to his powers through 2 rounds in the playoffs either. I think he looked a lot better in round three. I think Connor McDavid's going in round three, but I think you wanted that everybody can like maintain that momentum that they've had. The Oilers did have a little break between rounds two and three. So it's like, okay, they've done this before, and I'm sure the Panthers don't mind it and they have experienced it. It's just to have the spacing between games for travel, I think is a good thing because it's the longest distance ever since,
Oh, it's brutal.
yeah, like I get that one. I think that there's even a couple games though, like I think it's between 3 and 4 where they're not traveling. There's a big gap, but my biggest issue is between series. I get it. The networks
Exactly.
probably wanted this more in stone of like this is when it's going to be, and here's the NBA schedule, and they've had that in stone. But I just don't think this long of a gap was necessary. Like this could have started Monday, even
Yeah.
starting Tuesday. Like I feel like that's the difference to me. I'm like, okay, like this is a weird time, but at least both teams are experiencing it versus one or the other, right? Like they're both kind of at this weird point, so we'll see how they manage it.
And you mentioned this already, but I want to get your take on this because, we're saying both teams are better. Edmonton has had a lot more coming from their depth, but a player that should be mentioned in many cases right after McDavid and Draisaitl is Zach Hyman, and he is out for the entire season. This is a guy who gets net front. He can be a complementary piece. He seems in the room kind of guy. What is the impact? How serious is this a concern for Edmonton, in your opinion?
It's a huge concern because he does a little bit of everything. Like I know everyone just looks at him and goes, "Oh, he's a passenger to Connor McDavid." Like, no, no, no. This is an
No.
elite supporting player. There's something to being that you can actually step up with top players. You keep up with them. You compliment them. You help them be the best version of themselves. And I think Zach Hyman's done that with Connor McDavid, especially like last year we saw it too. So he's coming off a tough regular season, but I think he really brought it in the playoffs. It helps that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has seriously rebounded because he had a terrible regular season at the end of the day. On the score sheet, his 5-on-5 impacts weren't as good on either end of the ice. He's so locked in for the playoffs, so it's not like, okay, now it's Connor McDavid and two pieces of dead weight, right? Like he has Nugent-Hopkins, and I think Perry can fill that role enough if McDavid is playing at the level he was against Dallas and Nugent Hopkins can keep up the momentum, but you have to be a little bit worried. Like it helps the Oilers that it's not like, okay, now your third line is blown to shit and now your depth is completely out of sorts because of it. But I wonder how involved Hyman's going to be in the room, and I hope he is because even seeing Connor Brown emerge from that
Yeah.
like locker to get the guys going, just being there, his presence, I'm sure is meaningful. And I feel like for Hyman, it's the same kind of thing. That's a player who could be watching from above and having scouting reports of his own, right? Because he actually knows how to go up against these players. Like there could be a real advantage here if they use him in the right way and if he wants to be used in that kind of capacity. I would be really interested to see if that helps because any version of Zach Hyman contributing to this series, I think, will give the Oilers a boost to go up against a loaded Panthers team.
All right, so let's go into it. Sara has already filed her picks with us. She is picking Edmonton in 6. Shayna, your pick and number of games.
I am gonna say Panthers in 7.
Ooh, I had already written mine down. If you need proof, that's what I said too.
It
So
just feels right.
it does. It does. So, all right, perfect. So there you go. That's our quick kind of look around the league. And again, we'll be back soon with Sara. Please be sure, if you're not already, to follow her. She is going to be doing boots on the ground reporting both on her Twitter, but also at her Civ Report site and all the different places that she contributes. I know she's put out there that she'll be doing pre and post videos. Be sure to check those out. Subscribe to her newsletter if you aren't already. And we'll be sharing her content as well. So please follow us on Twitter, YouTube, or Instagram at 2_much_man, or on Bluesky at 2-much-man. And I know Shayna will be out there with her takes. We're even toying with a live game watch. So let us know if that interests you. We think we might be able to pull it off this year. We'll let you know. But until then, love the Sara, keep crushing it. We miss you. And we ask you all to do something, no matter how big or small, every day to make sure that hockey is truly for everyone. Happy, happy Pride.
Bye.